The future isn't digital, it's physical. We've been told that data is weightless, a cloud floating above us. But that's a lie. Everything we build, every AI we dream of, depends on a single fragile piece of silicon, and the world is running out of room to share it. This isn't a tech race anymore, it's the new oil, a resource so vital that global superpowers are drawing battle lines in the sand. We are entering a war where the prize isn't land or gold, it's the power to compute. Only a handful of factories on Earth can produce what the world demands. If they stop, our civilization stops with them. This is the story of the most complex object ever built, and why it's the spark for the next global conflict. Welcome to the Silicon War, the foundation of glass. To understand the true scale of this conflict, we have to look past the marketing hype and the shiny screens. We need to look at the silicon itself. For decades, the entire global economy has rested on a single assumption: Moore's law. The promise that our technology would get twice as fast and twice as cheap every 2 years. It felt like a natural law, as certain as gravity. But physics is a cruel mistress, and she doesn't care about our quarterly earnings. We have reached a point where the transistors on a modern chip are only a few atoms wide. There is no more room to shrink. We have hit a physical wall. This barrier has turned a friendly technological evolution into a desperate, violent scramble for survival. When you can no longer make things smaller easily, you have to make them bigger, hungrier, and exponentially more expensive. The era of cheap innovation is dead. Now, true power belongs to the tiny handful of entities that can manipulate matter at the atomic scale. These aren't just factories, they are the most complex cathedrals humanity has ever built, requiring a level of precision that makes brain surgery look like finger painting. A single vibration, a speck of dust, or a momentary dip in power can ruin months of production. And here lies the terrifying truth. Almost all of this advanced capacity is concentrated in one specific geopolitical hotspot. A single disruption in a foundry in Taiwan doesn't just mean you have to wait longer for the next iPhone. It means the paralysis of global defense systems, the collapse of modern healthcare infrastructure, and the starvation of the very AI models we are told will save us. We have built a civilization of giants that stands on a foundation of glass, and that glass is beginning to crack under the weight of our own ambition. What we are witnessing is the end of the digital democratization. If access to the most advanced chips becomes a bottleneck, only the wealthiest nations and the trillion-dollar corporations will have a ticket to the future. The rest of the world will be left behind on the wrong side of the technological wall, scavenging for scraps of processing power. This is the core of the Silicon War. It is not about who writes the best code. It is about who owns the physical matter that the code lives on. Without the chip, the algorithm is just a ghost. And in this war, no one plans to be the one left with nothing but ghosts. The Silicon Shield. In the world of silicon, all roads do not lead to Rome. They lead to a single mountainous island in the Pacific. This island is not just a territory, it is the central nervous system of the digital age. We call this the Silicon Shield. The theory is simple but terrifying. Because this island produces over 90% of the world's most advanced chips, no global superpower can afford to let it fall or be destroyed. It is a hostage situation where the hostage is the global economy itself. But the vulnerability goes deeper than just one island. We must also talk about the machines themselves. The most critical equipment for making these chips comes from a single company in the Netherlands, a monopoly so absolute that it effectively controls the pace of human evolution. Without their ultraviolet lithography machines, the factories in Taiwan are just empty buildings. We have created a global supply chain with choke points so narrow that a single political decision can strangle entire industries overnight. Strategists in Washington and Beijing are waking up to this nightmare scenario. They realize that this concentration of power is a single point of failure for the entire human species. If a blockade were to cut off shipments from these foundries, estimates suggest it would cost the global economy over $2 trillion in the first year alone. That is not a recession, that is a collapse. Factories in Germany would stop. Data centers in California would go dark. The modern F-35 fighter jet, which is essentially a flying supercomputer, would be grounded without spare parts. The smartphone in your pocket would become an irreplaceable artifact. This fear has birthed a dark strategy, whispered about in the corridors of power, the scorched earth policy. The machines that make these chips are so advanced that they contain self-destruct mechanisms, remote kill switches designed to turn billion-dollar equipment into worthless scrap metal if the island is invaded. The message is clear: if we can't have it, no one can. We are watching a high-stakes poker game where the chips are quite literally the future of military dominance. The US cannot allow China to control this production. China cannot allow the US to throttle its rise. And caught in the middle is an island fortress, sitting on a powder keg of silicon, waiting for the first match to be struck. The Invisible Blockade. In response to this existential threat, the world has silently entered a new phase of warfare. We are no longer just watching a trade dispute, we are witnessing the construction of a digital Iron Curtain. The United States has woken up to a terrifying reality. They designed the future, but they forgot to build the factories to secure it. This realization triggered one of the most aggressive geopolitical maneuvers of the 21st century. A total blockade on advanced computing power. It wasn't a physical blockade with warships surrounding a port. It was a legislative weapon. By banning the export of the most advanced chips and the equipment needed to make them, Washington effectively attempted to freeze its rivals' technological development in time. They cut the oxygen to the dragon. But this invisible blockade has consequences that ripple far beyond the borders of China. It marks the end of the globalized internet as we know it. We are moving towards a fractured reality, a splinternet, where the East and West run on entirely different operating systems, different standards, and different truths. China is now pouring hundreds of billions of dollars into a desperate Manhattan project for silicon, trying to recreate in 5 years what took the rest of the world 50 years to perfect. They are trying to defy the laws of complex supply chains through sheer force of will and unlimited capital. However, money cannot buy time. Building a cutting-edge chip foundry is not like building a car factory or a steel mill. It requires a supply chain that spans the entire globe, from Japanese chemicals to Dutch lasers and American software. No single nation has ever mastered all of it alone. By forcing this decoupling, we are not just slowing down progress. We are destabilizing the delicate web that kept the great powers from fighting. When nations trade, they have a reason to keep the peace. When they stop trading and start building walls, the cost of war drops dramatically. We are dismantling the bridges of the global economy, brick by brick, and using the rubble to build bunkers. The question is, in a world split in two, which side of the wall will you be on? The AI starvation. While the politicians draw borders on maps, a different kind of crisis is unfolding in the digital realm. We are currently witnessing the greatest gold rush in human history, the race for artificial general intelligence. But this new god we are building has a voracious appetite. It eats silicon, and right now the cupboard is bare. We have trained ourselves to believe that AI is infinite, that it lives in the cloud and expands forever. But AI is physical. Every thought ChatGPT has, every image Midjourney generates, requires a burst of electricity through a specific type of processor. The more intelligent the models become, the more hungry they get. We are now seeing a phenomenon called compute starvation. The giants of Silicon Valley are hitting a ceiling. They have the data, they have the algorithms, but they physically cannot get their hands on enough GPUs to train the next generation of models. It is like trying to build a rocket ship while rationing the fuel. This shortage is creating a bizarre new reality. We are seeing a black market for computing power emerge. Smugglers are moving advanced chips across borders wrapped in foil like narcotics. Old gaming cards are being repurposed in sweaty server farms to squeeze out drops of intelligence. The desperation is palpable because everyone knows the stakes. Whoever trains the first true AGI wins everything. But what happens if the hardware can't keep up with the software? We might be heading towards a great stagnation. Imagine a world where AI stops getting smarter because we simply hit the physical limits of our planet's production capacity. We have built the engine of a Ferrari, but we are forced to drive it with the gas tank of a lawnmower. This bottleneck effectively decides who gets to be smart and who stays dumb. If access to intelligence becomes a scarce resource, rationed by the number of chips you own, then the gap between the elite and the rest of us won't just be financial. It will be cognitive. We are not just fighting for chips, we are fighting for the right to think. The final checkmate. So where does this leave us? We began this journey looking at a grain of sand, and we ended up staring into the barrel of a global conflict. The Silicon War is not a possibility for the future. It is the reality of the present. Every time you pick up your phone, every time you ask an AI a question, and every time a modern weapon finds its target, you are participating in this war. We have built a civilization that is entirely dependent on a resource we cannot guarantee. We have centralized the nervous system of humanity on a single island, in a handful of factories, protected by a fragile geopolitical truce. The paradox is cruel. To solve the world's biggest problems, climate change, disease, energy, we need more intelligence, we need more chips. But the very act of building that intelligence is driving us toward conflict. The nations that control the silicon will control the 21st century. They will decide whose economy thrives, whose military dominates, and whose artificial intelligence wakes up first. Those who are left behind will become digital colonies, dependent on the scraps of processing power thrown to them by the victors. But there is a ghost in the machine. As we race to build faster chips and smarter minds, we must ask ourselves, what are we actually building? Are we constructing the tools of our liberation, or are we simply building a faster way to destroy ourselves? The silicon doesn't care, it simply calculates. It executes the code we give it, whether that code is for a cure for cancer or a guidance system for a missile. The choice is not in the chip, the choice is still for a little while longer in us. As the blockade walls go up and the supply chains shatter, remember this. The next time you see a headline about Taiwan, or a trade ban, or a breakthrough in AI, do not look away. It is not just business, it is not just politics, it is the sound of the future being forged. And in the Silicon War, there are no spectators, only players and pawns. Which one are you? If you want to understand the forces shaping your reality, make sure you are subscribed. We will continue to track the signal through the noise. Until next time.